for a period of time, a lot of Israeli historians were writing books and receiving awards for having traced their lineage to the Khazars, So Kyrie Irving, at the time, he still might be a basketball player for the Brooklyn Nets, tweeted a link to a documentary, absent commentary. He didn't tweet this and say, I agree with this. He didn't tweet this and say, I disagree with this. He just tweeted a link to a readily available documentary that was on Amazon, and he said nothing. And the next thing you knew, he was a mainstream story, and he was at risk of losing his job as a basketball player.
I went on to Amazon Prime. I was like, you know what, let me see if there are any documentaries on Yahweh. So went in the search bar, typed in Yahweh, that came up. Went out and shared it on my platform. That was my night. In terms of the backlash, or what people call it, we're in 2022. History is not supposed to be hidden from anybody. And I'm not a divisive person when it comes to religion. I embrace all walks of life. You see it on all my platforms. I talk to all races, all cultures, all religions. And my response would be, it's not about educating yourself on what Semitism is and what anti-Semitism is. It's really about learning the root words of where these come from and understanding that this is an African heritage that is also belonging to the people. Africa is in it, whether we want to dismiss it or not. So the claims of anti-Semitism and who are the original chosen people of God, and we go into these religious conversations and it's a big no-no. I don't live my way like that. I don't live my life that way. Excuse me, I grew up in a melting pot, and I say a melting pot of all races, white, black, red, yellow, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, and you can see the way I live my life now. I'm not here to be divisive, so they could push their agenda. I don't want to say they, because I'm not identifying any one group or race of people, but I'm in a unique position to have a level of influence on my community. And what I post does not mean that I support everything that's being said or everything that's being done, or I'm campaigning for anything. All I do is post things for my people in my community and those that it's actually going to impact. Anybody else that has criticism, it obviously wasn't meant for them.
Hopefully I'm understanding what you said, and I want to make sure I get it right, because I don't want to misquote any part of it.
I don't expect understanding from a media conglomerate group that sincerely talks about the game of basketball, and then we bring up religion as if it's correlative at times when it's convenient for people to bring it up. So please just be direct with your question, so we can move on from this and I can talk about the game and go home to my son Elohim and my wife Marlene, okay?
Am I to take it that this was, what you shared was not something that you've even watched? This was, you did watch it, or either watch it or read it.
I had a lot of time last year to read a lot. Read a whole bunch. Good and bad about the truth of our world.
So then do you, I guess, understand or not understand those that might imply that that work had anti-Semitic leanings in it? I only ask this because the tweet is still up there, so
we're in 2022. It's on Amazon, a public platform. Whether you want to go watch it or not is up to you. There's things being posted every day. I'm no different than the next human being, so don't treat me any different. You guys come in here and make up this powerful influence I have over top of the adultery of, oh, you cannot post that. Why not? Why not? I don't hear an uproar on that. I'm not here to be divisive on what's going on this or that. I'm not comparing Jews to blacks. I'm not comparing white to black. I'm not doing that. That conversation is dismissive, and it constantly revolves around the rhetoric of who are the chosen people of God. And I'm not here to argue over a person or a culture or religion on what they believe. No, this is what is here. It's on a public platform. Did I do anything illegal? Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Did I do anything illegal? Did I hurt anybody? Did I harm anybody? Am I going out and saying that I hate one specific group of people?
And the next thing you knew, he was a mainstream story, and he was at risk of losing his job as a basketball player. And the title of the documentary was From Hebrews, to Negroes. And if he had just tweeted it and the media didn't react with such insanity, probably no one would have watched it. I'm serious. Like it was a nothing thing, but they made such a big deal out of it that I remember watching the situation go down and going, okay, what is in this documentary that people are freaking out so much that the NBA has given him, you'll recall this, a list of 6 demands, a list of 6 action items that he must complete in order to return to the franchise. Okay. Absurd. Do you remember this headline that was going on? This is what Kyrie Irving must do to get his life back for having tweeted out a link to a documentary that's available on Amazon. Not Jeff Bezos, but Kyrie Irving is at fault, not Jeff Bezos for making it readily available on Amazon. The first set of things that he had to do, the first thing he had to do was he had to issue an apology for posting a link to the movie, condemn the harmful and false content, and make it clear that he does not have anti-Jewish beliefs. Secondly, he had to complete the anti-hate causes that the Irving and the Nets and the ADL, I'll keep that topic, we're going to talk about more of the ADL today, agreed upon in their joint release, which included a $500,000 donation toward causes and organizations that work to eradicate hate and intolerance in communities. He was then told he had to complete sensitivity training created by the Nets. He was then told he had to complete anti-Semitic, anti-hate training designed by the Nets, and meet with representatives from the ADL as well as Jewish community leaders in Brooklyn. And the last one was after completing steps 1 through 5, he had to meet with the owner of the Nets, Joe Tsai, and lead franchise officials and demonstrate the lessons that he learned. Okay, so this was just like a whipping, a public whipping. It made entirely no sense. And I don't think he actually ended up doing any of that because then there was outrage and outcry, rightfully so, from the Black community going, what are you doing?
I was probably one of the first guys on Twitter. And when I realized the power it had, I knew I had to be very responsible. Followers, platform, whatever you call it, I knew I had to be responsible. I try to make people happy. I try to make people smile. My formula has always been the same. 60% to make you laugh, 30% to inspire you, and 10% whatever I'm selling. You have to be aware of what you're doing. And you have to be aware that sometimes when you put stuff out, not everybody's gonna like it. Some people are conscious, some people are not. I could tell he's not conscious, he doesn't really care what's going on. But us, I know that the game that we used to love and we promote, it brings people together. And it hurts me sometimes when we have to sit up here to talk about stuff that divides the game. Now we got to answer for what this idiot has done. Now we got to answer for what this idiot has done. Now we got to answer for what this idiot has done.
First of all, Adam's Jewish. You can't take my $40 million and insult my religion. If you're gonna insult me, you have the right, but I have the right to say no. You're not gonna take my $40 million and insult my religion. I think the NBA, they made a mistake. We have suspended people and fined people who have made homophobic slurs, and that was the right thing to do. I think if you insult the Black community, you should be suspended or fined heavily, depending. I saw they did the same thing to the kid in Minnesota this year when he made the gay slur. I think you should get suspended or fined. I think him acknowledging the Alex Jones thing should have happened with that too, because that dude's crazy. And I can't believe that we ain't talking about Baal. We're talking about this idiot. I can't believe that we ain't talking about Baal. We're talking about this idiot.
I can't believe that we ain't talking about Baal. We're talking about this idiot.
I don't know why we leaving Mouse's house. He been good to us. He feed us on Saturday, clothes us on Sunday, and then beat us on Monday. Or was it Tuesday? I don't know.
Jasper, I just want to go. I was a house nigga, Jasper.
What?
Jasper, don't you want freedom? We going to Promised Land. The Promised Land.
Promised Land? Cleveland?
No, Jasper.
Baltimore?
No, Jasper, the Promised Land.
Oh, the Promised Land.
Then there was outrage and outcry, rightfully so, from the Black community going, what are you doing?
You responded to Joe Tsai's comment about Kyrie on Twitter. What about that bothered you? And what about Joe Tsai's comment? And then what, if anything, that the league has done has bothered you?
Yeah, his response was alarming to me. I tweeted it out yesterday. He didn't say that the organization was working together to get Kyrie back on the floor. He said that he had more work to do. And our society has more work to do, including Josiah. And it's 2022. It takes 10 minutes of time to see who, these business owners, corporations, etc., who they're associated with, who they're doing business with, who they're affiliated with. And I'm vice president of the union, and it's part of my job to protect our players legally. And to see Phil Knight first come out and condemn, Kyrie, and also see Josiah say he has more work to do, I think it's time for a larger conversation. And Adam came out and said a statement that he doesn't believe Kyrie Irving is anti-Semitic, yet he's still suspended indefinitely. So those are my thoughts.
So when I hear what Kyrie Irving has to go through in order to be reinstated, I'm appalled. I'm appalled. And let me give you examples of how I feel like we don't have the same energy and hold other people who have dealt with racial tropes accountable. So when Sarah Silverman does blackface, or when Don Imus says nappy-headed hose, or when Howard Stern calls somebody the N-word in the skit, or when Brett Favre takes money from the state of Mississippi, we don't ask them to get sensitivity training. We don't ask them to donate $500,000. We don't ask them to meet with the Black National Caucus. They apologize, and then you know what? The rest of the world moves on. But what I feel like is happening here, and that's how in the Black community, like we've been told that's how the process works, right? Think about that, Bert. That's how the process works. Oh, somebody does a blackface. Oh, it was a misunderstanding. We got it. Okay. Is that person really racist? Probably not. Was it ignorant? Probably so. Okay. We understand it. We move forward. We don't like it. We would love to hold them accountable. But society and having a lot of Black people in positions of power, we don't have the governability to do that. But what we feel like happens with Kyrie is even after an apology, it's not enough. We feel like there needs to be more. And a lot of people I've spoken to over the last couple of days talk about this thing. Older mentors of mine talk about buck breaking.
This was just like a whipping, a public whipping. It made entirely no sense. And I don't think he actually ended up doing any of that, because then there was outrage and outcry, rightfully so, from the Black community going, what are you doing right now? What did he do that was so wrong? And of course, because of the way my brain works, when I see the media overreact, I just go, what's in this documentary? I mean, I think that's called the Streisand effect. Like when you go so crazy about something that people wouldn't have noticed, then suddenly go, okay, well, what am I not supposed to see in this documentary? And I, of course, instantly watched it. And it was, by the way, very poorly put together, which is why it made it even crazier. It seemed like a very budget film that was put together. It looks almost like a PowerPoint, to be honest. And I remember watching this going, how could this documentary have caused this much craziness in the media? And then I realized that the point of the documentary that it was making that upset, and this is why the ADL got involved, was the documentary makers, that is, were alleging that the current Jewish people that are in Israel are not, in fact, biblical Jews, and instead that the people that were brought over in the transatlantic slave trade from Africa to America were the original Hebrews, okay? So parking aside whether or not you agree with that, I have obviously no idea. How strange is it that that would cause that sort of a reaction? I mean, we live in a time where a man can say he's a woman and a woman can say that she's a man. You can quite literally wake up and pick your gender and pick your species, and people will be affectionate towards you. They feel so bad for you. They have sympathy. It's like we must do more to support these communities. They're not confused as who they are on the inside. But for Kyrie Irving, there was no grace. It was like, no, this is so wrong, and you're going to lose your entire life for even exploring that idea. What it led me to think was, it is quite sad when you consider that so many of us have no idea where we come from. Like, that to me was the bigger point, that there are so many people on this planet who have no idea where they come from. I'm one of them. I can't go back beyond a couple of generations. And the reason for that is because of war, it's because of slavery, it's because of large human trafficking efforts that take place. And typically it's because, well, how does it happen? Because you should know. We should be able to say exactly which tribe we all came from in the Bible, because you would just think your relative then tells their descendant and tells their descendant and tells their descendant forever. And we could just look at our family history and go, yeah, my great, all the way going back Bible, this was us. But we can't do that because you have situations where like a bomb is dropped, and like one kid survives. It doesn't even have a memory of his father or his mother. You have people that were separated, as African Americans were when they were first brought over from Africa, Black Americans, separated from their families, being traded all across, quite literally no memory. I mean, I have part in my family. My grandfather's grandmother was fully Native American. I wish I could learn more about the Cherokee Native Americans, and her given name, because they made them change their names in North Carolina, was like Eliza, my grandfather's grandmother. I know nothing about her. And there's something about that that's spiritually very wrong.
So please keep that same energy when we're talking about anti-other things. Because just because I post a documentary doesn't mean I'm anti-Semitic. And doesn't mean that I'm automatically standing with everyone that is believing in that. So it's unfortunate timing that we're in, but I'm glad that I could stand on the truth, because I'm not afraid of these mics, these cameras. I used to be looking everyone in the eye and telling them the truth. And I'm proud of who I am. Any label that you put on me, I'm able to dismiss because I study. I know the Oxford Dictionary, you look it up, right? It's one of the biggest mistakes I had in being a kid was not knowing European or Western language until I started looking it up and understanding the definitions and why they say, if you want to trick a black person, put it in a book. I was wondering my whole life why they said that. Now I'm 30 years old and I know reading is a superpower because it helps me understand where I'm going and where I come from, like a tree with roots.
Kyrie, the documentary listed among falsehoods, it said the Holocaust didn't happen. Do you believe the Holocaust
Those falsehoods are unfortunate. And it's not that I don't believe in the Holocaust. I never said that. Never, ever have said it. It's not come out of my mouth. I never tweeted it. I never liked anything like it. So the Holocaust in itself is an event that means something to a large group of people that suffered something that could have been avoided. No one said we had to practice racism. No one said we had to treat each other like garbage. No one said that I had to stand here today and understand that many people that come from generations 60 years ago, 40 years ago, enslaved some of my ancestors still, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, and it's still going on. And you guys are asking me, respectfully, to speak on something that was a documentary that I had nothing to do with. I didn't make it. So just please keep that same energy when you guys are addressing me.
Kyrie, for the record, do you have any anti-Semitic beliefs?
Again, I'm going to repeat. I don't know how the label becomes justified because you guys ask me the same questions over and over again. But this is not going to turn into a spin around cycle of questions upon questions. I told you guys how I felt. I respect all walks of life and embrace all walks of life. That's where I sit.
I think what people want to hear, though, is just a yes or no on that question. Yes or no.
I cannot be anti-Semitic if I know where I come from.
And one thing, and this is a big thing, by the way, so I'm really hoping that a lot of people who are Jewish are watching this as well. That struck me as really odd when I was learning about Sabbatianism, and this really shocked me in my core because I've always told you guys I grew up with a large Jewish community. All my best friends were Jewish growing up, and I've always seen like the Star of David. That is a lot of Jewish people wear as a necklace, you know, and I thought that that was associated traditionally somehow with Judaism. And so I was very surprised. And I will ask the question, do you know the history of the Star of David? Why is it being called the Star of David? And I'm just going to just show you guys this straight up on Wikipedia. So if it's on Wikipedia, basically after they've obscured everything, that just must mean that it's just such an irreversible fact because you wouldn't even want to admit this. But this is what the entry shows you about the Star of David, because it's actually a very recent thing that has been adopted from the Jewish community. Okay, it's not something stemming from the ancient times. And this is exactly what it reads. It reads that it is a derivative of the seal of Solomon, was used for decorative and mystical purposes by Muslims and Kabbalistic Jews. I want you to remember that, okay? So it's a derivative of the seal of Solomon. King Solomon was used for decorative and mystical purposes by Muslims and Kabbalistic Jews. It also goes on to say that only around 1 millennium later did the star begin to be used as a symbol to identify Jewish communities, a tradition that seems to have started in Prague before the 17th century. I want you to remember that as well. And from there spread to much of Eastern Europe in the 19th century. It came to be adopted by European Jews as a symbol to represent Jewish religion or identity in the same manner the Christian cross identified the religion's believers. The symbol became representative of the worldwide Zionist community after it was chosen as the central symbol on a flag at the First Zionist Congress in 1897. So this is a recent symbol. But I'm going to show you that there is a mention of that star. It is called something else in the Bible. It is referred to, and I'm going to just dig this up for you, something that is known as the Star of Remphan in the Bible, okay? And I'm going to show you that star right now. Here's a picture of it. Oh, you can see if you're Jewish, you're going, oh, that's the Star of David. You can see on that left side there, by the way, that you see a goat and you see it looks like a pharaoh up top there. So you're going, okay, I don't associate this with Judaism whatsoever. And in the Bible, here's where it's mentioned. It says, "Ye took up the tabernacle of Molech, and the star of your god Remphan, figures which ye made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon." It's also referenced later. It says, "Ye have borne the tabernacle of your Molech, and your Chian, your images, the star of your god, which ye made to yourself." So what is this referring to? It's referring to the ancient Canaanites.
Candace Owens provides a wealth of information, but I believe her focus is misdirected. She aims to awaken people bound by the Abrahamic religions rather than starting with her own people. Although she discusses issues similar to those of Hebrew Israelites and engage with our arguments, her efforts seem to stall there. She's attempting to bridge and unify different religions, but within Christianity alone, there's a substantial challenge in overcoming more than 33,000 denominations. So have we been exposed to witchcraft and charms through the so-called Abrahamic religions and their related media platforms? Are we under a hex? What is a hex? Let's go to the etymology dictionary online and let's see what it says about this word hex. And I'm just going to focus on what's highlighted in red. It reads, to practice witchcraft, to hex, witch, magic spell, a witch, the devil, sorcerer. The word forming hexa, which means 6, appears before vowels and in some chemical compound words. This leads us to the hexagram. What is a hexagram? A hexagram is the familiar design of 2 interlocked triangles. It's generally supposed to have represented the Jewish faith since the time of David or Solomon. Therefore, this hexagram is known as Magen David, the shield of David, or the Star of David, or Solomon's seal. Actually, the hexagram had nothing to do with either David or Solomon. It was not mentioned in Jewish literature until the 12th century AD and was not adopted as a Jewish emblem until the 17th century. The real history of the hexagram began with Tantric Hinduism, where it represented union of the sexes. The downward pointing triangle was the female primordial image, or yantra, existing for the universe. In the course of infinite time, the goddess received a spark of life within her triangle. Many people are influenced by the hexagram, commonly known as the Star of David, and some use misleading teaching to promote it.
Diana says, we have a friend who seems to want to delve more and more deeply into conspiracy theories. He told us that the Star of David is actually a satanic symbol widely used in pagan and occult areas. The only thing I can find on the internet about it is that it was introduced by Mr. Rothschild in the 40s and that he was not a believer but had ties to the occult. Can you please tell us the truth behind this symbol? And we are Messianic believers, and we would like to be able to confront these anti-Semitic theories with truth. Thank you for your response. All right, well, let me just tell you, Diana, I've heard this stuff before over the years. I heard, you are absolutely right. It's born out of anti-Semitic thinking. It's born out of anti-Semitic thinking. People who want to be opposed to Israel will find anything they can to complain about Israel, anything that is accepted as being the things of Israel, whether it being a kippah or a talit or a Star of David or some other symbology that is associated with Israel. They always want to tie it back to the cult. Here's the reason why. Well, we know we don't want to have anything to do with the devil, right? We don't want to have anything to do with the symbols of the devil. And if all of a sudden all of these things that are symbols of Israel are symbols of the devil, well, then guess what the logic is? So you stay away from Israel and anything to do with Israel. I want to remind you of something. Israel is the name of the kingdom. That's the name of the kingdom. So do you think there's a possibility that the devil, who hates the kingdom of God, could possibly conjure up some lies to deceive people, to get you to follow a lie and get you to go away from the things of the Lord? Yeah, I think that's been his dominant tactic throughout the entire history of mankind. So here's what I say when somebody comes up to me and wants to talk to me about, well, you know, the Star of David, you know, it's a satanic symbol. Get out of my face. Get behind me, Satan. I'm not listening to your lies. You go sell that lie stuff down in the ditch. You get down there with the rest of your anti-Semitic idiots. We're serving the Lord here. And we're going to pursue the light, not the darkness. And we don't waste our energy on stupid arguments going around to defame other people. Believe me, there's enough demons in this world and there's enough evil in this world. We don't have to go searching for it out of God's people. Let's encourage God's people and strengthen God's people and edify people and seek that which is pure and kind, instead of trying to find complaint with something that we see as a common thing associated with Israel or with God's people. What a bunch of waste of time. So I really don't waste any of my time on those people. And what I would say is I'm not interested in discussing any of this with you, and you need to stop wasting your time on this.
So is this so-called Star of David biblical? Absolutely not. What's the origin of the Star of David? Magen David, which is called the Shield of David, the so-called Star of David or hexagram constructed of two interlocked triangles, now accepted as a symbol of Judaism. Actually, it was not associated with Judaism until the late Middle Ages and was not officially accepted as a Jewish symbol until the 17th century. The original source of the Magen David was the Tantric Great Yantra, which stood for union of the sexes, the downward pointing triangle being female, the upward pointing one male, the two signifying the eternal union of God and Goddess. Capitalistic sex worship brought the Yantra into Jewish tradition, but later puritanical elements obscured its original meaning. So many people are influenced by the hexagram symbol through various Abrahamic religions, and they are also affected by the hex of the five-pointed star. See, the five-pointed star, the pentagram, is also known as the pentacle. The pentacle, based on the symbol of the goddess core in the apple core, the pentacle or pentagram was worshipped by Pythagorean mystics who called it pentalpha, the birth letter interlaced 5 times. Its meaning was given as life or health. Some called it the star of Ishtar or of Isis or of Isis's underworld twin Nephthys. In Egypt, The 5-pointed star represented the underground womb. Use of the pentacle as an amulet of protection or healing was common in Babylon, where it was often drawn on pots to preserve their contents. The amulet, known as the 7 seals, shows a pentacle as the first of its holy signs. According to Judeo-Christian traditions, the seal was supposed to represent the secret names of God, and the pentacle was the chief of them, inscribed on King Solomon's magic ring. Thus, it was sometimes erroneously called Solomon's seal. However, it was more closely connected with pagan deities than with the Jewish one. A pentacle with 1 point straight down represented the horned god, whom Neoplatonic philosophers called pentamorph, he of the 5 shapes. He appeared in human form as well as the 4 horned animals, bull, ram, goat, and stag.
You know, you see this on the Israeli flag, you see this as a symbol everywhere, the Star of David, the Jewish star, it's thought of it. But others say, no, that is a satanic symbol. And this is a further proof that God is not with modern Israel, and that Judaism is a satanic religion, and that the Jewish people are under a satanic curse. You know, the anti-Semites will be quick to point to all of this. So what about the Star of David? Is it true that it has been used as a sign in satanic circles? Absolutely. And is it true that it has been used as a sign of Israel, the Jewish people, in Jewish history? Yes, it's true. In and of itself, it is neutral. In and of itself, it is just a star with a certain number of points on it. That's all it is. You say, no, but I've seen that the points represent demonic. Listen, in and of itself, it is a simple drawing, a simple artwork. Many years ago, my dad told me the story about a man in prison for sex crimes. And the psychologist sits down with him and draws a picture of a line just across the page like this. And he says, what do you see? And he gives him some pornographic description. He goes, what? Then he draws a circle. What do you see? And the guy gives him a pornographic answer. The psychologist says, what? Then he draws a square. Same thing. And the psychologist said to him, sir, you have a filthy mind. He goes, what? You're the one showing me the pornographic pictures. No, they were just lines and circles. These are just images with no meaning in themselves.
What?
Israel is celebrating 75 years of independence and Stars of David are to be seen everywhere, but Star of David is not really a Jewish symbol. On the Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, you can see Islamic buildings from the Mamluk period that has Stars of David. Let's check the Ottoman walls of the city. Here's Damascus Gate, and not too far from it, yes, that's right, Star of David. At the northeast corner of the old city, we have Herod's Gate or Bab al-Sahara, and yes, that's right, when you enter it, you'll see 2 Stars of David. I've found 1 Star of David in the Muslim quarter, and next to the tomb of Prophet Samuel, northwest Jerusalem, Ottoman buildings with Stars of David and crescents. Antique dealers are selling Islamic coins from medieval times, including, yes, Ayyubi coin with a Star of David.
So remember, a pentacle with 1 point straight down represented the horned god. The question is, who is the horned god? The horned god is the goat demon Molech. Candace Owens might consider shifting her focus from defending her Catholic faith against Frankism to exploring the Talmudic teachings within Judaism, which endorse the worship of Molech. Here's the proof. What does the Jewish Talmudic literature say about Molech? Let's go to the Talmud Sanhedrin, section 64a. It reads, he who gives his seed to Molech incurs no punishment unless he delivers it to Molech and causes it to pass through the fire. If he gave it to Molech but did not cause it to pass through the fire or the reverse, he incurs no penalty unless he does both. The Mishnah teaches idolatry and giving to Molech. Rabbi Abin said, our Mishnah is in accordance with the view that Molech worship is not idolatry, for it has been taught, if one causes his seed to pass through the fire, whether to Molech or to any other idol, he is liable, in other words, to death. Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Simeon, said, if to Molech, he is liable. If to another idol, he is not. The horned goat demon, Molech, also known as Baphomet, was conceptualized by Eliphas Levi, a key figure in Freemasonry. This is coming from BBC News, Decoding Symbols on Satan's Statue. It reads, the name dates back to the Inquisition and torture of the Knights Templar about 1100 who, according to French chroniclers of the Crusades, confessed to worshipping a heathen idol called Baphomet. Some scholars believe Baphomet was simply a corruption of the Prophet Muhammad. But over the years, as the mystery and speculations around the Templars has grown, so too have the interpretations of the word. The best known modern image of Baphomet was drawn in 1856 by the French occultist Eliphas Levi in the book Transcendental Magic, Its Doctrine and Ritual. He envisaged a winged hermaphrodite with a torch between his horns and a pentagram on his forehead. Levi's Baphomet was a hermaphrodite with breasts. But we took off the breast, says Greaves. The temple did not want to get embroiled in a debate about gender, and this is the image of the Baphomet. Notice the pentagram or the forehead, and notice the breast. Eliphas Levi, a key Mason who meshed the Kabbalistic teachings with Luciferian doctrine, laying the foundation to Masonic rituals. So let's take a look at this source here, Eliphas Levi and the Kabbalah. Let's see what it reveals in terms of what Eliphas Levi believed and promoted. It reads, what is more absurd and more impious than to attribute the name of Lucifer to the devil, that is, to personified evil. The intellectual Lucifer is the spirit of intelligence and love. It is the paraclete, in other words, an advocate. It is the Holy Spirit, where the physical Lucifer is the great angel of universal magnetism. Now let's go to this source, Baskin-Wade Dictionary of Satanism, and this is going to give you a deeper understanding of Eliphas Levi and his influence on a key individual that helped take the Luciferian doctrine to a whole nother level. This is coming from, again, Dictionary of Satanism by Wade Baskins. Levi Eliphas, French magician and author of works on the occult. Eliphas Levi, whose real name was Alphonse Louis Constant, claimed to have summoned up the ghost of Apollonius of Tyana in London in 1854. Born in Paris about 1810, he is said to have been reincarnated as Aleister Crowley. A.E. Waite, the learned English occultist, said that Levi's doctrine and ritual contained the secrets of an occult society into which Levi had been initiated and from which he had been expelled. One of the earliest Americans influenced by Eliphas Levi was the prominent Masonic writer Albert Pike. Morals and Dogma revealed entire sections Pike took verbatim from the works of Levi. Through the influence of Eliphas Levi and Albert Pike, the integration of Judaism with Luciferian doctrine became a foundational element of Freemasonry. This is coming from the Morals and Dogma of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of prepared for the Supreme Council of the 33rd degree. On page 321, it reads, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious, named to give to the spirit of darkness, Lucifer, the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light, and with its splendor intolerable blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not, for traditions are full of divine revelations and inspirations, and inspiration is not of one age. I want to make a key point. Morals and Dogma does not contain any quotes of Albert Pike telling the initiates to worship Lucifer. However, General Albert Pike, Grand Commander, Sovereign Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry, did give the following instructions to the 23rd Supreme Councils of the world. Instructions to the 23 Supreme Councils of the World by Albert Pike, July 14th, 1889, recorded by A.C. de la Rive. It reads, "That which we must say to the crowd is we worship a God. It is the God that one adores without superstition. To you, Sovereign Grand Master Inspectors General, we say this that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. The Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, would Adonai, the God of the Christians, whose deeds prove his cruelty, perfidy, and hatred of, without ugliness? No white without black, for the absolute can only exist as two gods, darkness being necessary for the light to serve as its foil, as the pedestal is necessary to the statue and the brake to the locomotive. Thus, the doctrine of Satanism is a heresy, and the true and pure philosophical religion is the belief in Lucifer, the equal of Adonai. But Lucifer, God of light and God of good, is struggling for humanity against Adonai, the God of darkness and evil. See, Freemasonry, in conjunction with the Abrahamic religions, promotes the veneration of the hexagram through the square and the compass of the Freemasons, and the pentagram through the eastern stars. There is another lesser known fact that many Freemasons may not be aware of regarding the letter G, suspended at the center of the square and the compass. This is coming from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. God, G-O-D, the initials of Gomer, Oz, Dabar. It is a single coincidence and worthy of thought that the letter composing the English name of deity should be the initials of the Hebrew word wisdom, strength, and beauty. The three great pillars, or metaphorical supports of Masonry, they seem to present almost the only reason that and reconcile a Mason to the use of the initial G. In its conspicuous suspension in the east of the lodge, in the place of the delta, the incident seems to be more than just an accident. Dabar, wisdom; Oz, strength; Gomer, beauty. Freemasonry promotes the worship of Gomer, the son of Japheth, and his descendants. Gomer is the father of Ashkenaz in modern times, identified as Germans. Genesis chapter 10, beginning at verse 1, it reads, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim." Let's connect some of the other sons of Japheth and his offsprings to some of the modern people groups of today. Ashkenaz, Germany; Meshach, Moscow; Togarmah, Armenians, Germany, and Turkey; Madai, Medes, in other words, Persians, and peoples of India; Gomer, people living in the area of the Black Sea, Germany, and Wales. The scriptures identify them as being the Isle of the Gentiles. In other words, the nations that live near the waters, that live near the islands.
The Canaanites were a brutal and a wicked culture. They frequently engaged in behavior that was considered obviously immoral and decadent, right? A list of the sins that Israel was told to avoid at all costs. Those sins included the Canaanites partook in incest, in child sacrifice, in homosexuality, and in bestiality. Now in your mind, you're going, okay, that sounds familiar. We spoke about this as well when I was telling you guys about the Khazarian kingdom. And I think somebody asked a question yesterday, like, oh, do you know about the Khazars? And I had mentioned to you that, yes, I'm very aware, by the way, because I think that is what was mentioned also in that documentary that Kyrie Irving shared, was that for a period of time, a lot of Israeli historians were writing books and receiving awards for having traced their lineage to the Khazars. A very similar story with that kingdom before it was crushed by Russia and Persia.
What we're going to do right here is go back, way back into time.
This person writes about a Cody's conspiracy, just gives a thumb up, thank you. This person says, I'm glad that you brought up the Frankists. You should look into the Khazars and the origin of the Ashkenazis. BTW, did you know the origin of the word Cabal comes from Kabbalah? Yes, I did. I figured that, by the way, as I was digging into this. And yes, there is a Israeli historian named Abraham Pollock. And there's actually a lot of historians prior to World War II who received awards for saying that the origins of, which is why it was stunning to me to see Kyrie Irving treated in the way that he was treated, 6 steps to get back to your life, because he shared a documentary which was theorizing that the original Jews, I actually didn't watch the end of the documentary, but the point was he was making that documentary suggested that the people that are inhabiting Israel today are not the biblical Jews. That was the point of why he got into trouble. I cannot tell you one way or another. I have not gone into any anthropological research, but what I can tell you is that prior to World War II, and you again can pivot to your browser right now and look up a man named Abraham Pollock, okay, prior to World War II, he extensively wrote about, and the Israeli historians extensively wrote about the fact that they were the Khazars. They were like, yeah, here's the evidence, blah, blah, blah. He received awards from Tel Aviv University. And then suddenly after World War II, they said to him, like, this research was not helpful. And they just stopped printing his books. So I don't know. I literally can't tell you. And now if you ask someone about that, they'll say, oh, well, the science changed. Yes, we know. The science always changes. The research always changes. Very convenient. But that's what that person is referring to. I'm just letting you know when he says the Khazars. Now, in case you're not familiar at all with who the Khazars are, outside of whether or not you can draw a line from the Khazar Empire. The Khazarian Empire, my understanding, and I have not done enough research into it, essentially it was an empire. And can you fact check it again? This would be in Ukraine, and what would be modern Ukraine? And let me know in my ear when you dig that up, Mark.
We're checking.
Thank you. I'm pretty sure that it was in what would have been deemed modern Ukraine. It all goes back to Ukraine. But essentially, they were worshiping and doing things that were considered so immoral and so corrupt. And I'm talking about sexual stuff. And I'm also talking about in the way that they cheated people, that they were given an option from modern, I would say Iran, but Persia and Russia, like either you convert to one of the faiths that we think will make you more moral, or we will crush you. And so there was this mass conversion in the 8th century, and you can fact check me on that too. I think it was the 8th century where the Khazarians mass converted to Judaism as the faith. And to be clear, it was the people that were running this empire at the top who were just up to no good, and they carried on their corruption. They carried on their sexual deviancy despite pretending to have converted to Judaism. That doesn't mean the people that they ruled over didn't meaningfully convert. I'm sure they did, but the people at the top didn't. And so Russia and I'm saying Iran because my brain is not doing. Russia and Persia teamed up and crushed the Khazarian Empire. And so there has been a theory for a while that what is happening is that the Khazarians are reassembling, and that essentially they want to crush Russia and Iran, which is kind of happening right now, actually, which is interesting to think about. I hadn't even thought about that until right now, that the elites do seem to really want war with Russia and Iran. But I'm just giving you guys that information so that you can know why that person commented on that. I can only tell you books that I've read from Israeli historians, but they say the science has been updated, so who knows? Now it's what was once established Israeli science is now anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. So I can't tell you what's right and what's wrong anymore in today's world.
As far as the alleged conversion of the Khazars, you can read it in Yehuda Halevi's book, The Khazari, that it may be true that as there is debate and discussion, there are Turkic people a little over 1,000 years ago, that some of the leaders or some of the people did, in fact, convert to Judaism. Some of the leaders or some of the people did, in fact, convert to Judaism. Some of the leaders or some of the people did, in fact, convert to Judaism. As far as the alleged conversion of the Khazaris, you can read it in Yehuda Halevi's book, The Khazari, that it may be true that as there is debate and discussion, there are Turkic people a little over 1,000 years ago, that some of the leaders or some of the people did, in fact, convert to Judaism and then became part of the larger Jewish people. Khazars as a whole disappeared from history. That's it. End of subject. There is no Khazarian mafia. There is not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero. Absolutely zero. Some of them may have willfully converted to Judaism, maybe mainly the leaders.
Who is the real Netanyahu? What does he stand for? What are his beliefs? What is his story? What is his story? What is his story? This story begins in October 1949, 1 year after Israel's formation. This is when Netanyahu was born, the second child of a historian. His paternal grandfather was a rabbi and a Zionist writer. His name was Nathan Milikowski. Later in life, he Hebraized his surname from Milikowski to Netanyahu, a name which means God has given.
This is Yair Netanyahu's DNA test that has been leaked. You can see right there his Y DNA is RM198. Descendants of RM198 come from Poland, Russia, Germany, and other European countries. Does this look Semitic to you? Does this look Middle Eastern?
You say, well, where did the name Ashkenazi came from? So a little over 1,000 years ago, as Jewish people scattered around the world had now emigrated in Europe and now were living in the Rhineland in Germany, they looked at the name Gomer in Genesis 10, and they connected Gomer with Germany, so they took on the identity of the name Ashkenaz. It has nothing to do with Ashkenaz in the Bible, which is a descendant of Japhet. It's just a name that was taken. Okay, it's that simple. Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin or anything else. It was shortened from a Russian name when my grandfather came over at Ellis Island. The name got shortened to Brown. It's just a name. That's all it is. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Japhet is a myth, 100% false, zero truth to it. Just study the history. What?
Are you familiar with the Khazar theory? There's a theory, it's widely accepted as anti-Semitic, that Ashkenazi Jews come from the Khazars and they're not Levantine. But DNA tests.
It's not anti-Semitic. It's a question of fact. So Shlomo Sand, for example, has argued that, I think probably exaggerated, but it's simply a question of fact. If my ancestors from the Ukraine have Khazar roots, changes nothing. I'm Jewish. My grandfather was Jewish. My family happens to have a story saying that we're descended from the Baal Shem Tov. Okay, that's part of the culture. Doesn't matter what the DNA shows.
There's not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero.
First, let me, when you see Ashkenazi Jews sharing high similarity to Romanians and Hungarians, this is because both of these populations were offshoots of the Khazars. They were both founded by these members of the Caucasus who ruled this area of north of the Black Sea, where we have South Russia nowadays, between the 7th and 13th centuries. Very powerful empire. They converted to Judaism in the 8th century, and they sent offshoots to Eastern Europe. And we still some Ashkenazi Jews are mapped to this region of Ukraine. They're not all mapped to Ashkenaz. Most of them are, but some of them are mapped to Ukraine, and we can see very nicely some kind of migration route using GPS.
There's not a single Jew on the planet that can be traced back in any definitive way to the Khazars. Zero.
It is quite sad when you consider that so many of us have no idea where we come from. Like that to me was the bigger point, that there are so many people on this planet who have no idea where they come from. I'm one of them. I can't go back beyond a couple of generations. And the reason for that is because of war. It's because of slavery. It's because of large human trafficking efforts that take place. And typically it's because, well, how does it happen? Because you should know. We should be able to say exactly which tribe we all came from in the Bible, because you would just think your relative then tells their descendant and tells their descendant and tells their descendant forever. And we could just look at our family history and go, yeah, my great, all the way going back Bible, this was us. But we can't do that, because you have situations where like a bomb is dropped and like one kid survives. It doesn't even have a memory of his father or his mother. You have people that were separated, as African Americans were when they were first brought over from Africa, Black Americans, separated from their families, being traded all across, quite literally no memory. I mean, I have part in my family. My grandfather's grandmother was fully Native American. I wish I could learn more about the Cherokee Native Americans, and her given name, because they made them change their names in North Carolina, was like Eliza, my grandfather's grandmother. I know nothing about her. And there's something about that that's spiritually very wrong. And like I said, everybody across the world has gone through this. There's something that puts us in a very vulnerable state when we don't know where we come from.
Candace Owens illustrates the struggle between being caught between two conflicting views, much like the ancient Israelites during the time of the prophet Elijah, who challenged their worship of Baal. On one hand, she discusses the identity crisis faced by the Negro, acknowledging that many, including herself, can only trace our ancestry back a couple of generations. But on the other hand, she broadens this discussion to suggest that this identity crisis is a universal issue affecting all humanity. And keep in mind, universal is synonymous to the word Catholic. Her apparent indecision may stem from her marriage to someone connected to the group and religion that enslaved the Negro, her own people. Her vocal criticism of Frankism might be an attempt to find a safe space. But if she conducted thorough research, she would recognize that the issue is not limited to a small elitist sect. See, Candace Owens requested her research team to investigate the links between the Khazarian Empire and the Ukrainians.
The Khazarian Empire, my understanding, and I have not done enough research into it, essentially it was an empire. And can you fact check it again? This would be in Ukraine, and what would be modern Ukraine? And let me know in my ear when you dig that up, Mark.
We're checking.
Thank you.
Let's conduct an unbiased investigation for her team to reveal the extent of these connections, beginning with a detailed mapping of the Khazarians. So let's start with locating Magog. This is coming from the Easton's Bible Dictionary. Magog, region of Gog, the second of the sons of Japheth. In Ezekiel, it is the name of a nation, probably some Scythian or Tartar tribe descended from Japheth. They are described as skilled horsemen and expert in the use of the bow. The late Father Jerome says that this word denotes Scythian nation, fierce and innumerable, who live beyond the Caucasus and the Lake Maeotis and near the Caspian Sea, and spread out even onward to India. See, according to the table of nations in the scriptures, Magog is the second son of Japheth. Let's confirm this by going to Genesis chapter 10, starting at verse 1. It reads, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were the sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus." According to the Easton's Bible Dictionary, 1894, Magog is also connected to the Scythians. So who are the Scythians? This is coming from the Britannica Online. This is what it says about the Scythians. Scythian, also called Scyth, Saka, Sake, member of a nomadic people, originally of Iranian stock, known from as early as the 9th century BCE, who migrated westward from Central Asia to southern Russia and Ukraine in the 8th and 7th century BCE. The Scythians founded a rich, powerful empire centered on what is now Crimea. So again, who are the Scythians? This is coming from an article titled Localizing Ashkenazic Jews to Primeval Villages in the Ancient Iranian Lands of Ashkenaz. It reads, an analysis of 393 Ashkenazic, Iranian, and Mountain Jews and over 600 non-Jewish genomes demonstrated that Greeks, Romans, Iranians, and Turks exhibit the highest genetic similarity with Ashkenazi Jews. The geographic population structure analysis localized most Ashkenazi Jews along major primeval trade routes in northern Turkey adjacent to primeval villages with names that may be derived from Ashkenaz. Iranian and Mountain Jews were localized along trade routes on the Turkey's eastern border. Loss of maternal haplogroups was evident in non-Yiddish speaking Ashkenazi Jews. Our results suggest that Ashkenazi Jews originated from a Slavo-Iranian confederation, which the Jews called Ashkenazic. An example, Scythians. Though these Jews probably spoke Persian and or Osseti, this is compatible with linguistic evidence suggesting that Yiddish is a Slavic language created by Irano-Turco-Slavic Jewish merchants along the Silk Roads as a cryptic trade language, spoken only by its originators. So again, who are the Scythians? The Anchor Bible Dictionary, Volume 1, definition of Ashkenaz, it reads, Ashkenaz, first descendant of Gomer, who is the first offspring of Japheth in the Table of Nations. In Jeremiah 51:27, Ashkenaz appears along with Ararat and many as a kingdom called upon to oppose Babylon. The name is identified as the Neo-Assyrian Ishkuza, who appeared between the Black and Caspian Seas in the 8th and 7th century BC, driving out the Cimmerians. In other words, Gomer. This association is reflected in Genesis 10 and threatening the Assyrians. For Herodotus, these people came to be called Scythians. The correspondence of the consonants Ashkenaz, Ishkuza, and Scythian is obvious, although cultural associations reach back into the 3rd and 2nd millennium BC. Present archaeological evidence for a distinctive Scythian culture begins in the 7th century BC, especially at Nimirov, Gorodish. Possible portrayals of Scythians appear on 9th century reliefs of Ashur-Nasirpal II, but the first Neo-Assyrian mention of the Ishkuza occurs during the time of Sargon II in the 8th century BC. Driving back the Cimmerians, the Scythians were able to push south to dominate Asia and Media in the latter part of the 7th century BC. About this time, a Scythian raid against Egypt was stopped by Psammetichus II. For the later history of the Scythians and the question of their identification with the enemy from the north mentioned in the first part of Jeremiah, and it tells us to go see the Scythians. So according to the Anchor Bible Dictionary, the Scythians are the descendants of Ashkenaz. Let's see the definition of Scythians. Biblical scholars sometimes associate the Scythians with Ashkenaz and with the bringers of destruction. In the prophecies of Jeremiah and Zephaniah, outside the Hebrew Bible, their reputation for savagery is alluded to in 2nd Maccabees 4:47, 3rd Maccabees 7:5, 4th Maccabees 10:7, and Colossians chapter 3, verse 11. The Scythians called Ashguze by the Assyrians apparently likely first appeared in written history in the annals of Esarhaddon and seemed to be centered at that time in what is today northwest Iran. According to Herodotus, the Scythians ruled over all the Near East for 28 years after entering the area from the north. Traditionally, this period of rule is assigned to the 7th or 6th century BC. The Scythians continue to be mentioned in texts of the Babylonians, Persians, and Greeks as allies and as enemies through the 4th century BC. By the 3rd century BC, Scythian presence in the Near East is restricted to the Crimea and the shores of the Black Sea. Ovid records Scythian life in the 1st century AD.
You see, the Bible makes a distinction, Mr. President, between two groups of Jews. One is called the synagogue of Satan. There are two different kinds. And those people, in the latter days, it's called the remnant of God's people, which will be Jewish people. And then there's the synagogue of Satan. And nearly all of your religious deceptions in the latter days, what the Bible speaks, latter days could be 1,000 years, what they call the synagogue of Satan. In other words, they are energized by a supernatural power called the devil. This is what the Bible teaches, whether you believe it or don't believe it. This is the biblical teaching, and this is what I believe. And I believe that they have a strange brilliance about them. They're smart, and they are energized, in my judgment, by a supernatural power.
Well, also they do something else. They're not smart.
And you see, of course, Hitler didn't. They had a stranglehold on Germany, on the banking of Germany, on everything in Germany, and the media. They had the whole thing, you see. But he went about it wrong. But this stranglehold has got to be broken, or this country is going to go down the drain.
Believe that?
Yes, sir.
I can't ever say it, but I believe it.
No, but if you get elected the second time, you might be able to do something.
So the Scythians occupied what's called modern-day Russia and Ukraine. There is another group who is connected to both the Russians and Ukraine. They are called the Khazars. The Ashkenazi Jews are the East European Jews which were found in Poland, Russia, Germany, and West Asia. The Jewish Encyclopedia of 1905 revealed that the main stock of the Jews came from this people known as Khazars. Khazars, a people of Turkish origin whose life and history are interwoven with the very beginnings of the history of the Jews of Russia. The kingdom of the Khazars was firmly established in most of South Russia long before the foundation of the Russian monarchy by the Varangians. Jews have lived on the shores of the Black and Caspian Seas since the 1st century of the Common Era. Historical evidence points to the region of the Ural as the home of the Khazars. Among the classical writers of the Middle Ages, they were known as the Khazars, Khazirs, Akadzirs, and Akatirs. Let's go to another source, Tracing Lost History from the Caucasus to Europe by Dr. Kolja Spori. It reads, to the origins of Europeans and Jews. According to some scientists, large parts of the so-called European or Caucasian civilizations, including the Indo-European languages, originally come from the area between the Caucasus and the Volga, in other words, the Caspian and Pontic steppe. Ashkenazi Jewry, deriving from the ancient Khazars, can also be traced back to the same area. I embarked on an overland trip from the Caspian Sea to the Caucasus to Central Europe, following in the footsteps of our ancestors to learn more about our history on a road trip from east to west. So in this source, the migration of these people are comparable to the movement of a serpent. Peep this out. The Völkerwanderung is usually described as a nation's migration period of Germanic people from east to west, pushed forward by climatic changes and or enemies of the Asian steppes like the Huns. And another Völkerwanderung view, this migration is rather seen as an invasions of joint Turco-Gothic forces. In a more delicate interpretation, the invading steppe forces were manipulating with an invisible hand the sheep-like resident people into nation building. In other words, gnat equals snake, symbol of rebirth. The words for settlements and places like the Stan states, Istanbul, Astana, Istana, which means palace, stanza, Italian equals space, distance, in other words, between two spaces, to me seem etymologically closely related just as much as the separation lines in between Renitsa, in other words, Slavic border, Ukraine border land, and Rens, in other words, German, all strangely connected through Old High German. Now let's deal with Meshach. Who is Meshach? This is coming from the Oxford Bible Church, UK. It reads, regarding Meshach and Tubal, some assign a Russian identification connecting these two nations with the modern Russian cities of Moscow and Tobolsk. Meshach, Moscow, and Tubal, Tobolsk. The first view became well known through the Schofield Study Bible, that the primary reference is to the northern powers headed by Russia, all agree. The reference to Meshach and Tubal, in other words, Moscow and Tobolsk, is a clear mark of identification. Thus, the name Moscow derives from the tribal name Meshach, and Tobolsk, the name of the principal state, from Tubal. This view is partly based on the similarity of the sound in these names and their close proximity to Rosh, in other words, Russia. If this is so, the names Meshach and Tubal point directly to Russia, being identified as Moscow, the capital of modern Russia, and Tobolsk, an Asiatic Russia. Modern Tobolsk was founded in 1587 in western Siberia, and from there the Cossacks rode eastward to open up all of Siberia to Russian domination. Meshach and Tubal would then be names standing for Russia and Europe and Asia. L. Sale Harrison corroborated this identification on linguistic grounds. Ethnologists, historians who track the migration of people, tells us after the flood, the Japhethites migrated from Asia Minor to the north beyond the Caspian and Black Seas. They settled in the area of Rosh that we know today as Russia. Wilhelm Gesenius, the world-class Hebrew scholar whose Hebrew lexicon has never been surpassed, said Gog is undoubtedly the Russians. He also identified Meshach as Moscow, the capital of modern Russia. Tubal he identified as Tobolsk, the earliest province in Asiatic Russia to be colonized, and also the name of the city in which Peter the Great built the old fortress after the pattern of the Kremlin in Moscow. Meshach was founder of the Mashi, a barbarous people who dwelt in the Martian mountain. He went on to say that the Greek name Mashi, derived from the Hebrew Meshach, is the source of the name for the city of Moscow. In discussing Tubal, he said Tubal is the son of Rapheth, founder of the Tibereni, a people dwelling on the Black Sea to the west of the Mashi. So let's go to the Testaments of the Grand Prince of Moscow, page 279. It reads, the Meshera were a Finno-Ugaric tribe. Their descendants have either been Russified or have amalgamated with Bashkirs. Some of the Mordvins call themselves Meshers. Their name is present in the city of Meshkovisk, a Kaluga district. Now let's go to the Eastern Bible Dictionary and let's see how Meshach is defined. Meshach, drawn out of the sixth son of Japheth, the founder of a tribe. They were in all probability of Moshi, a people inhabiting Moshian mountains between the Black and Caspian seas. In the 120th book of Psalms, verse 5, the name occurs as simply a synonym for foreigners or barbarians. During the ascendancy of the Babylonians and Persians in Western Asia, the Moshi were subdued, but it seems probable that a large number of them crossed the Caucasus range and spread over the northern steppes, mingling with the Scythians. There they became known as Muscoves and gave that name to the Russian nation and its ancient capital, by which they are still generally known throughout the East. We have demonstrated that Russians, Ukrainians, Ashkenazis, who are Germans, Khazarians, and Scythians share a common heritage. Now let's include another related group, the Vikings. The connection is made through an unknown Germanic tribe called the Jutes. Who are the Jutes? This is coming from the Etymology Dictionary online. This is their definition of Jutes. It reads, Jute, one of the ancient Germanic inhabitants of Juteland, the peninsula between modern Germany and Denmark, who with the Angles and the Saxons invaded Britain in the 5th century. Traditionally, they were said to have settled in Kent and Hampshire. The name is related to Old Norse, Eotar, related Jutish. I know exactly what you guys are thinking, because I shared the same curiosity. Is there a coincidence that Jutes, Jutish, sounds like Jew, Jewish? Who are the Jutes? This is coming from the antiquity of Jot race, tracing the ancestry to the Scythians of antiquity, page 12 and 13. It reads, this fact is further proved by their unparalleled bravery, because Jutes were the first conquerors of Britain, even when later on Saxons invaded the shore of Southampton Water. They could not succeed without reinforcement by a body of Jutes who formed settlements of their own in the Isle of Wight. And on the mainland, the historical material of those times is so meager that some historians confuse Saxons with Jutes as belonging to the same race. Although not only was the race different, but even the territory where they lived was quite separate. Jutes were Scythian Jots, while Angles and Saxons belonged to Teutonic race. Let me read that again. Jutes were Scythian Jots, while Angles and Saxons belong to Teutonic race. So the Jutes are Scythian Jots. So are the Jutes really Scythians? Danes, Vikings, or Normans by H.G. Wells in The Outline of History in chapter 32, section 4 says that there were very small racial and social differences between Angles, Saxon, Jute, Dane, or Norman, as mentioned at number 4 above. He has confused Angles and Saxons who belong to Teutonic race with Jutes, Danes, and Normans who belong to Scythian race. The fact that they were allies in their raids upon Britain is not enough for their racial confusion. Vikings were called Northmen because they lived in the north, while Angles and Saxons lived in the south. Northmen ultimately were abbreviated into Normans. So again, are the Jutes, who are actually Scythian Jots, really connected to the Vikings? Is this true? In 912, an expedition of these Normans under Rolf the Ganger established itself upon the coast of France in the region that was known henceforth as Normandy or Normandy. There was a fresh conquest of England by the Danes, and the Norman Duke of Normandy became King of England. This will be mentioned in detail in another chapter. Here, I am concerned only with the fact that Danes, Vikings, or Normans were all Jutes. Let me read that again. Here, I am concerned only with the fact that Danes, Vikings, or Normans were all Jutes. They were all different names of the same race of Scythian Jots. The Chinese called them Yuchi. These Yuchi conquered the slightly Hellenized kingdoms of Bactria and mixed with Eran people there. Later on, these Yuchi became or were merged with Aryan elements into a people called the Indo-Scythians, who went on down the Khyber Pass and conquered northern portions of India as far as Benares, wiping out the last vestiges of Hellenic rule in India. This big splash over the Mongolian races westward was probably not the first of such splashes, but it is the first recorded splash. See, I believe with what I just shared with you guys also suggests that the term Jew may have its origins in the Germanic tribe known as the Scythian Jutes, who were also referred to as the Vikings.
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient Israel, that's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time, all that he said,
I know. We don't have
so many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites or you want to be Jews?
Now let's talk about the Jews. And I'm doing this, I'm doing asterisks. I'm not asterisks here, it's quotations, air quotations here, because you see this a lot, that people who have not done enough research, in my view, who think that this is a Jewish conspiracy. And this is kind of me, by the way, the same response when you get to people when I say, I was baptized Catholic and I'm so happy about it. Oh, what about the Catholic conspiracy? They talk about Catholics and pedophilia. And we're going to talk about all of that today because I'm just feeling tired of the cowardice of people who know what's happening and refuse to say it because they're fearful that they're going to be killed. And yes, I recognize the people that we're dealing with are psychopaths. Yes, I recognize people shot a president, a Catholic president, in broad daylight when he was with his wife. Okay, that's all very real. But what is the alternative to that? You stay quiet when we know the truth. We stay quiet and we allow these people to take over the world, which they are very close to doing. We pass this off to our children. Like Andrew said, it is going to take not just brave men, but it's also going to take brave women. And women, you know how to research, and I'm going to give all of you guys the tools to understand what is happening, okay? All of the faiths, Muslim, okay? If we're talking about Islam, we're talking about Judaism, we are talking about Christianity, have been infiltrated. All of them. There is not one of them that has not been infiltrated by a satanic cult that practices pedophilia, okay, listen to me, as a religious sacrament. I am going to tell you what the name of this satanic cult is so that you can now do your own research. Now, I will caution you that you cannot, with this particular name, trust Wikipedia as a source because it's hiding in plain sight. But they have virtually wiped his name from the internet, despite the fact that he has garnered so much power that I am going to show you that a Supreme Court justice who openly worshiped this religion, okay? So again, they've infiltrated religions. They have infiltrated all of them.
A CBS News investigation has uncovered a loophole that allows accused and convicted American pedophiles to escape justice by moving to Israel. So Ian Lee has been following this for more than a year, and he traveled to Israel for this investigation. He worked with a group that tracks people accused of sex crimes, which estimates dozens of Americans have used this loophole.
So, he's 6'2".
We are on a stakeout looking for this man, Jimmy Julius Caro, 48 years old and wanted on charges of sexually assaulting a 9-year-old girl in Oregon back in 2000 and a 5-year-old girl in Israel in 2001. He's considered dangerous. But these photos are a few years old, so we don't know if he'll look the same. He remains elusive. Previous attempts to capture him have failed.
Obviously, the fear that he would somehow figure out that anyone's looking for him and bolt. He just called his number.
Shauna Aronson got a tip that Caro's expected at this clinic near Tel Aviv.
Who's going to call the
She's with JCW, Jewish Community Watch, an organization that hunts down accused pedophiles who flee to Israel from the U.S., exploiting a process called Law of Return, whereby any Jewish person can move to Israel and automatically gain citizenship.
The ease with which pedophiles seem able to use this law as an escape route
haunts victims like Mendy Hawk, who says he was abused from age 8 by a teacher at an Orthodox Jewish school in Los Angeles.
So your classroom is right here. How does it feel being back?
I was very anxious and, stressed coming back here. A lot of memories coming through my mind.
Memories of his alleged abuser, Mordechai Yom Tov, who taught him Hebrew studies when he was just 8 years old.
So in the beginning, he would just rub me like outside of my pants, and then I would say about 3 to 4 months later, he started going like in.
Reaching down your pants?
Yeah, it's reaching down.
Why did you feel like you couldn't tell anyone?
I was scared, I was ashamed. I just didn't know what people would think of me with the whole situation.
Yom Tov pled guilty in 2002 to sexually abusing and committing lewd acts against 3 other boys. He served jail time, but when he was released, he violated his probation and, according to JCW, fled to Israel with help from individuals within the Orthodox Jewish community. JCW tracked Yom Tov down and confronted him with a hidden camera in Jerusalem, where he admitted to illegally fleeing the United States with help and using a fake passport to enter Israel.
I was supposed to stay for 5 years in the same city. I was supposed to, let's see, join the homicide cruiser. I was supposed to go every 2 weeks to the police station. I left within a week later.
He had this message for his victims.
I'm very, 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 very sorry.
The other person in this video is Meir Seawald, the founder of Jewish Community Watch. He tells CBS News Yom Tov's case isn't uncommon in the Orthodox community.
The same thing that's going on in the Catholic Church right now around the world, the exact same thing happens in our community. The rabbis say it's, you know what, he promised he's going to go for therapy, he's never going to do it again. Boom, he's in another community. A few years later, he's at the same thing, and we hear more allegations that the person continued to abuse children.
And often, those abusers end up in Israel.
As a child, my next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood. Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. My next guest treats ritually abused children in her therapist practice. She feels that the problem is much more widespread than any of us can imagine. Says there's no doubt in her mind that the children and adults that she treats are telling the truth. Tina Grossman, we're glad to have all of you join us here on the show. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were
right.
abused.
I was born into a family that believes in this.
And this is does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before. And
so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I blacked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to,
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not, or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back.
Now, you were telling us earlier that this was that the practice with the Kilroy death was a religion called
Palamayombe, which not all people who practice Palamayombe obviously sacrifice. I think what we're looking at is a worship of evil here.
Right.
Taking normal or standard religions and perverting them to the worship of evil.
Right. And I just want to emphasize that you don't have to be Caribbean to do it.
No.
Yes.
The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, that's not a very typical thing. I just want to point that out.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies.
Let's see what's inside the Talmud that contradicts Torah. What does the Talmud say about pedophilia? In the case of a male child, a young one is not regarded as on a par with an old one, but a young beast is treated as an old one. What is meant by this? Rob said, pederasty with a child below 9 years of age is not deemed as pederasty with a child above that. Samuel said pederasty with a child below 3 years is not treated as with a child above that. What is the basis of their dispute? Rob maintains that only he who is able to engage in sexual intercourse may, as the passive object of pederasty, throw guilt upon the active offender, whilst he who is unable to engage in sexual intercourse cannot be a passive subject. But let's go to the footnote to better explain what I just read. This is the footnote 54b. The reference is to the passive subject of sodomy. As stated, Super 54a, guilt is incurred by the active participant even if the former be a minor. An example, less than 13 years old. Now, however, it is stated that within this age, a distinction is drawn. So what is the age of distinction? Footnote 24. It says, Rob makes 9 years the minimum, but if one committed sodomy with a child of a lesser age, no guilt is incurred. Samuel makes 3 the minimum. You see what it's saying here? One rabbi says 9 years is the minimum, but another one says, but if one committed sodomy with a child of a lesser age, no guilt is incurred. But another rabbi says 3 is the minimum. And then when we look at 25, at 9 years, a male attains sexual matureness. 26. The point of comparison is the sexual matureness of woman, which is reached at the age of 3. Wait a minute. Sexual matureness of a woman is at the age of 3. According to their Talmud, an adult man and woman are allowed to have sexual intercourse with kids. Ketubah 11b, a small boy who has intercourse with a grown-up woman makes her as though she were injured by a piece of wood. When I said it before Samuel, he said injured by a piece of wood does not apply to flesh. Some teach this teaching itself as to a small boy who has intercourse with a grown-up woman. When a grown-up man has had intercourse with a little girl, or when a small boy has intercourse with a grown-up woman, or when a girl was accidentally injured by a piece of wood, in all these cases, that's how they treat it. Like she has a splinter. If she has intercourse with a little boy, I'm not even gonna say intercourse, molesting a child, a little boy, they say they're gonna treat it like she has a splinter. It means this: when a grown-up man has intercourse with a little girl, it is nothing. For when the girl is less than this, it is as if one puts the finger into the eye. In other words, accidentally poked yourself in the eye. So it's no big deal. But when a small boy has intercourse with a grown-up woman, he makes her as a girl, reduces her to a girl who is injured by a piece of wood. In other words, a girl having a splinter in her hand. Let's see the footnotes. It says, footnote number 1, although the intercourse of a small boy is not regarded as a sexual act. Wait a minute. It's perversion. Although intercourse, no, it's raping, not just no intercourse. It's a raping, it's molesting. Although the intercourse of a small boy is not regarded as a sexual act, nevertheless, the woman is injured by it as by a piece of wood. 6, you see less than 3 years old. We go to 7, an example, tears come to the eye again and again. So does virginity. In other words, it'll come back, she'll grow out of it. So does virginity come back to the little girl under 3 years old. Stuff is sick. This is sick.
Yeah. So we have seen the video, and reports of sexual abuse of detainees are horrific. They ought to be investigated fully by the government of Israel, by the IDF. Prisoners need to be treated, prisoners' human rights need to be respected in all cases, and when there are alleged violations, the government of Israel needs to take steps to investigate those who are alleged to have committed abuses and, if appropriate, hold them accountable.
Learn the fact, an established fact, that these pedophiles are in power, okay? Now, I learned about this quite accidentally, by the way. I didn't mean to learn about this. I was so shocked. I was coming apart when I learned that Sigmund Freud created psychoanalysis to protect pedophiles. I thought, how could this be? How could Sigmund Freud do this? How could the world not be speaking about this? A guy who worked at the archives, learned German, read his notes, and discovered, this Harvard guy, that he was protecting pedophiles, that psychoanalysis was created as a means to convince rape victims who said, my dad raped me when I was a child, these women that were coming in to see him, that they were crazy. Gaslighting them. No, actually, you're just attracted to your dad. That is the origin story of Sigmund Freud. And I landed upon a book. I believe the book was written, and you can look this up, Skylar. Is it David Bacon? I'm going to look this up, guys, so mind the typing here because I want to make sure I give you this exact book because I was interested in Freud. Let's see what this is called. I think it is David Bacon. I think I got that right. Yes, it's called Sigmund Freud and the Jewish Mystical Tradition, okay? David Bacon is, I'm pretty sure he is a historian. I think he worked at Columbia, but I'm going to look this up for you guys right here, okay? He was a major influence in how the field of psychology implemented the use of statistics, blah, blah, blah. He went to Brooklyn College. He went to Ohio State University. He taught at University of Chicago, Ohio State, Harvard, York University, and he got quite interested in the Jewish mystical tradition and learned that psychoanalytic concepts actually derived from Kabbalah, okay? It is utterly absurd to suggest that the people who worship, who deem the Torah to be their holy book are all worshiping the Kabbalah, the Zohar. What he discovered in his work, right, and when you read that book, you will see this, was that Sigmund Freud was a Kabbalist, and he starts speaking at length about this great Jewish schism that happened when a bunch of Jewish people believed that Jacob Frank was their Messiah, until they realized, and actually Jews were the first one who expelled the Frankists. They said, get the heck out of here, what are you doing? After they had a sexual ritual, they were actually expelled from the region. They realized, what the heck is this? And at that moment, what the Frankists did was there was a mass conversion because they taught this as a religious rite. You have to deceive and you have to infiltrate. They converted into the Catholic faith, okay? Not all of them, but some of them converted into the Catholic faith. And you will see down the line as you study this that some of them converted back and some of them went to Christians, and that they encouraged over and over again for them to essentially deceive the world through mass conversions.
All three of these so-called Abrahamic religions made every attempt to destroy the heritage of the Negro, destroy our heritage, and hijack it. All three. None of these religions were created by Abraham. Abraham did not create Judaism. Abraham did not create Catholicism, Christianity. He did not create Islam. Abraham didn't create a religion. Moses didn't create Judaism. Christ didn't create, nor did he practice Judaism. He did not practice Christianity. He did not practice Catholicism. He did not practice Islam. So all three of these so-called Abrahamic religions made every attempt to destroy the heritage of the Negro. All three of these so-called Abrahamic religions declared war on the Negro. The Roman Catholic Christian Church declared war on the Negro. Let's start with them. Slavery in the Catholic Church, papal grants to the King of Portugal, giving authority to enslave the Saracens and other non-Christians of West Africa with whom Christendom is at war, 1452 through 1514. In 1442, a Portuguese captain brought to the Gold Coast some Moorish prisoners of war, exchanged them for 10 Negro slaves. and brought these back to Lisbon. A trading settlement was established at Lagos by 1444. It would appear that by 1452, the Portuguese were anxious to establish their property rights over their newly discovered West African territories, and so Pope Nicholas V, Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, Pope Nicholas V was approached and was apparently led to believe that these territories of the Guinea coast were inhabited by Saracens and other enemies of Christendom. There is no other explanation of a series of papal documents which applied the well-known contemporary rules of war to the situation in West Africa, whereas the Portuguese were well aware the local Negro inhabitants were not Saracens, were not Muslims, and were not enemies of Christendom. So that tells us it should have never been classified as a transatlantic slave trade. It should be classified as a transatlantic world war.
Okay, this ends when Jews and Muslims and Christians come together and root out the Satanists.
King Leopold slaughtered 10 to 15 million Negroes to further push the lie that the Congo was uninhabited. This is coming from an article titled "Belgium Too Arrogant to Apologize for Killing 15 Million Congolese" by Elhaik, June 18, 2022. It says, "To be assured, all European colonialists carried out unspeakable atrocities in Africa. The first and most benumbing was the Belgian seizure of the DRC in 1885 by King Leopold II, the brother of King Philippa's great-grandfather, under whose rule 15 million Congolese were murdered. This is the highest known figure of genocide in world history. Even in the lunatic Nazi Holocaust against innocent and defenseless Jews, the highest estimated casualty figure was 6 million. Yet till today, the Germans show remorse, they paid reparation, and teach their children that there is no excuse whatsoever for such atrocities, and that everything must be done to ensure genocide never occurs again. In contrast, the Belgians show no remorse, would not apologize, pay no reparation, make excuses for the genocide, do not teach this part of their history in schools, and have not campaigned against a possible repeat of their history of genocide."
The Belgian government, they had to make a decision. What do they tell the public? Leopold II had lied to his people for a long time, and they looked up to him like a father figure who brought glory to the country. Not only would the citizens be disappointed, but it would make Belgium look terrible to the outside world. Their nation was still less than 100 years old at the time. England and the United States had already outlawed slavery in the 1800s, so the King of Belgium had essentially taken a big step backwards in humanitarian progress. The Belgian government chose to allow their people to continue believing the lie that King Leopold II had built for himself. They taught their children that there was never any slavery in the Congo Free State, and that everything King Leopold II did was wonderful. This lie was retold generation after generation, to the point where it became their new truth and part of their cultural identity.
So again, the Belgians show no remorse, would not apologize, pay no reparation, make excuses for the genocide. This is coming from the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. Belgian Jews greet King Leopold III on March 20th, 1934. It says, "King Leopold III, young Belgian monarch, today received a Jewish deputation consisting of the Chief Rabbi of Belgium, Dr. Joseph Wiener, and representatives of the Jewish Consistory. The deputation congratulated the king on his having ascended the throne of Belgium. The king thanked the delegation and the Jews of Belgium for their loyalty to him." What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.